No, yes. Hello, my name is Adlercreutz, architect, member of parliament, politician, which might be a strange combination, even though it was maybe more of a surprise for my surroundings than for myself when I did that move. Let's see, does this? When I was a kid, I was very interested in society in general. I was a very worried teenager in the 80s, worried about nuclear armament and things like that. And I attended these peace marches in Helsinki. But as many teenagers, I was quite a shy boy, and I thought that, okay, maybe politics isn't for me. And in the 80s, politics wasn't cool by any way. So I thought that, okay, maybe I channel maybe this interest through other means and started studying architecture, which of course wasn't something that came out of the thin air. I'm a son of two architects, so one would say that it was in that sense quite an easy choice. But then again, is architecture that different from politics? I think there are many things that are interconnected. When you're an architect, you need to be interested in society, you need to understand how society works, you need to have certain communicational skills, and maybe most of all, you need to be able to draw a synthesis from many different and often contradictional sets of facts or requirements. So that's what an architect does. Lots of requirements, and then you somehow try to find the essence, the idea of how these could be combined into something that's good and useful. And in many ways, that's something that a politician also does. You have lots of requirements from different stakeholders, and then you have to somehow make the most of those, something that, as well as possible, fulfills the requirements. Many say that, isn't it frustrating to be a politician because everything is so slow? But then again, when you're an architect, things are really slow. I mean, a project can easily take 10 years. You start something, and then you go into recession, and you have to change everything, scale things down. Somebody complains about the zoning, about the planning, and then you have to start all over again. Every day you have to sell your idea to your client, cooperate with the constructional engineer, whatever other consultants you have on the project, and so on and so on. So there's many things that is the same in architecture and politics. One thing that architects do a lot better, however, is killing their darlings. When you start a project, first you fall in love with the idea until you understand that this is shit. You have to throw it away. And then you start again until you realize that this isn't worth continuing either. And then finally, when you do enough work, and it's always a question of, I feel it's a question of doing enough work, maybe not having this divine inspiration, but really working, then finally you reach the solution that's good. But when you're a politician, when you get an idea, you throw it out to the world, and then you're stuck with it, and then you can never walk back. So this is maybe a lesson that architects could take that politicians could take from architects.
Are you talking about yourself or?
No, of course. I think that maybe I might fulfill some of those ideas as a politician. I hope so, but in general. So I'm here in two roles, as an architect and as a politician. And I'll tell you something about maybe my relationship with building, my relationship with wood, how you can save the world by building in wood, and then maybe what I should have on my to-do list while working as a politician. To build a house is not a minor matter in Finland. It's about making your mark on the land, about making a place. It's a heroic endeavor in many ways. Building is a major theme in folklore all around the world, and maybe more than in many places in Finland. As long as you build in wood, which of course in Finland also is the only right way. Ideally, you cut down the trunks yourself, trunks that you have carefully selected in the forest one summer day during long contemplative walks. You pull them out of the forest, preferably with a horse, and do a proper log house. So that's the idea. Of course, the reality today is slightly different, but the story is the same. As an architect, I want to use a material that I understand, whose story I understand, whose workings I understand. And wood is simple. It's quite easy to understand. It's easy to understand how it sticks together, how it bears its load. And you can give it many characteristics. You can treat it in many different ways. And you can work it yourself, maybe most of all. And that's one thing that I feel is very important. Of course, I mean, concrete is fantastic. It's a wonderful material. It's a mystical material in many ways. 1 second, it's goo, this soap, and then it somehow suddenly turns into shiny stone. It's inexplicable in many ways. But wood is different. You can see the process. It's easy to read the way it was constructed. This is not really our work, or it was a work that we did together with Jart Pienkorv, but he's the original artist. The logic of a wooden building is always visible. You can see time on the wooden surface. You can see the weather it is today, something that happened 5 years ago, or maybe 20 years ago. History leaves its mark on a wooden building, but in a good way. And a wooden building can have a previous life, and it can have a life after this. You can use it, you can reuse it, you can use it for different purposes in different scales. One day it's a building, the next day maybe a piece of furniture, until it some days maybe ends up warming your house. And the best of all, you can build it yourself. Light pieces of building material, anybody can stick them together. That's me on the right before turning grey. You can do it with simple tools, and you can live there happily in your own wooden building. Because who wouldn't be happy in a wooden house? But of course, we do not only build for ourselves, for selfish reasons. When you build something, you have an impact. You have an impact on the site. You might have an impact on society. You might even have an impact on the world. Because by building, we can save the world. In the big scheme of things, I mean, the biggest thing we are facing is climate change. A few years ago, the Paris Agreement said that we, humankind, should be carbon neutral. Actually, we should cut down our emissions by 80% by 2050. Then we said, okay, we should be carbon neutral by 2050. A few years ago, Finland said that Finland should be carbon neutral by 2045. And today, 2035 is the aim we have here nationally. And building can have a great positive or negative impact on these goals. Because around 50% of the natural raw materials we dig out of the earth or cut down or process somehow goes to our buildings. Around 50% of our waste here in Europe is caused by our houses, by our buildings. Around 40% of our emissions come from our buildings, the building processes. Around 10% of our global emissions come from the making of concrete or steel. So that in itself is a huge thing. And in this comparison, the forest wood shines. And why is that? 1 kilo of dry wood has stored almost 2 kilos of carbon dioxide in its lifetime, which means that one small single-family house built in wood is carbon storage for around 30 tons of carbon dioxide. How much is that? That's for 10 years of driving in an ordinary family. That amount of carbon is stored in a building. How come? Here you see a comparison between different wall structures. A wooden wall is carbon negative, whereas a concrete sandwich wall is a great cause for carbon emissions. And when you compare a traditional concrete building with a traditional wooden building, the difference in carbon dioxide, in carbon footprint is equally big. So by building in wood, you might be able to save the world. Then again, do we have wood? Do we have enough wood to build? In 24 hours, the Finnish forest grows as much as we in Finland use for building in wood during the whole year. In 29 seconds, the forest grows as much as we need to build a 6-story wooden apartment house in Finland. In 10 hours, the forest grows as much as would be needed if we replace all our housing, all our concrete housing, all our housing projects with wooden housing projects. So in the big scheme of things, it's not about big amounts of wood, but it's about a big possibility to cut down our emissions and to build more smartly. So what's stopping us then? And now we come to the part where I really should do some work in Parliament, and maybe Petri too at the Ministry. This is how we build today in Finland. The concrete industry was very smart in the 60s. They came up with a system of load-bearing sandwich walls and these ontelolatat, whatever you call it in English, these concrete slabs. And everybody started making those products. Concrete walls, concrete slabs, which means that today, if you want to build a house, an apartment house, if you want to get lots of offers, you build it in concrete because you can get offers from many and then you can choose the cheapest one and go on building, knowing that this is probably a pretty cost-efficient project. When you build in wood, it's different. It's often a one-off project. You often have to design all the details from scratch. You often have to start working with the provider at an early stage, which means that you really can't choose between 1, 2, 3, or even 6 providers. Which means that we don't build apartment houses in wood because we feel that it's maybe not that cost efficient. We are scared of the potential in higher costs. So to get rid of that, we should come up with the same thing that the concrete industry did in the 60s, have a standardized system for apartment houses, and then have lots of providers that then can give qualifying offers. But of course, we also need changes in other, in our laws, in our regulations, on a higher level. Today, when you cut down a wood in Finland, when you saw it to pieces of wood, when you export those pieces of wood to Sweden, it suddenly doesn't burn as easy anymore. You build a house of it in Sweden, you can do with only sprinklers. But if you take the same piece of wood and move it back to Finland again, then you need sprinklers and you need cladding of gypsum board. So the same piece of wood somehow, for some mysterious reasons, behave differently in Finland or Sweden. That we need to get rid of. We don't need both suspenders and a belt. A belt should do. We also don't educate enough architects in wooden design, in wood architecture. We don't educate enough engineers, most of all, in wooden architecture. There is only one place in Finland where you educate engineers at the lower level that know how to build in wood at the moment. Previously there were many. So we really should do more about that. But we should maybe also change the concept of the building itself. On the left side you see a building as it was maybe 50 years ago. You had decently thick walls, you had windows, you had a chimney, and the building worked. On the right side you see the concept of a building today. Really, really thick and complicated walls that are built by layers and layers of different materials, most of them toxic and not very carbon friendly. And everything is held together by this intricate machinery that keeps the air flowing and gets water in and out and electricity coming through many places, but especially air flowing, because we can't breathe without those things, they say. So what have we reached with this mechanization of the building? Not very much, actually. When we have started focusing on theoretical energy efficiency, we have gained theoretical energy efficiency, but unfortunately not practical one. These are statistics from Helsingin Energia, the energy company in Helsinki. It shows how apartment houses from different ages, how much primary energy they consume. And there you see on the left side houses built at the beginning of the last century. They have a lot of green, and when there's a lot of green, then they're energy efficient. Here we almost reached that level again, even though if we'd only look at this energy report that every house has, that shouldn't be possible at all. According to the energy report, modern houses are vastly better than old houses, but in fact, like in practice, the story is different. Which means that we have started building houses that don't age well, that are hard to repair, that are practically impossible to recycle without really gaining much. So instead of measuring the theoretical energy efficiency during a short period of time, during the lifespan of these quite disposable buildings, we should look at how the material is produced, if it releases carbon when it's produced, or sequesters carbon, how much energy it needs when it's processed, how well it ages inside the building, what the longevity of that building is, and how easily that building can be recycled afterwards. If we do that, if we measure that, then we build sustainably, then we could reach our climate goals, and I believe we would also in that case build more in wood. And that means that we are not only talking about nice houses, wooden joints, nice architecture, we are also talking about saving the world when we talk about building in wood. Thank you.